All right, well, welcome everyone. We're glad that you're making today. We're going to show you a short video to start off with, and then we will get started with our talk and our speaker.
Welcome to today's session, everyone.
We are Premed CC, a student-led organization established in the fall of 2021.
Our goal as an organization was to create an online program for pre-medical students at community colleges and universities, with the hope of guiding the next generation of diverse and inclusive physicians.
And while we advertise our organization as being for community college students, our events are open to anyone.
We realize that finding guidance and mentorship in a pre-med journey can be especially challenging for first-generation pre-med students,
people that lack the financial resources, or just those who do not know people in the medical field.
One of the best parts about our events is that they are virtual, so you can do it from the comfort of your own home.
We typically have events on Fridays from 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and on Saturdays from 11 a.m. to 12:30 Pacific Standard Time.
If you aren't able to attend the event, all of our sessions are uploaded on our YouTube channel.
Many of our sessions will end up with a Q&A with the speakers.
Any questions that you have, you may put it in the Q&A session on Zoom, and our team members will read them and have them answer.
After you have attended our event, you can log into our website and complete the quiz, which will contain questions pertaining to our session today.
If you score 70% or higher on the quiz, you will be awarded a certificate to show that you attended our session today.
If you want to stay connected with the upcoming events or just want to tell your pre-med friends about the Premed CC, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok as @PremedCC.
Alrighty, everyone. Welcome to today's session. So I'm going to introduce our speaker. So Dr. Kurdistani is a professor and chair of the Department of Biological Chemistry with a secondary appointment in the Department of Pathology and Laboratory Medicine at the David Geffen School of Medicine at UCLA. Dr. Kurdistani also serves as the Associate Director of the Eli and Edith Broad Center of Regenerative Medicine and Stem Cell Research. Dr. Kurdistani has obtained his associates from Santa Monica College, his bachelor's from UCLA, and his MD at Harvard Medical School. During his undergraduate studies, he conducted research in the field of host-guest chemistry under the guidance of Dr. Donald J. Cram. Following an internship in pathology and laboratory medicine at UCLA, he embarked on postdoctoral training in the laboratory of Dr. Michael Grunstein. Dr. Kurdistani's postdoctoral work earned him the UCLA Chancellor's Award for Postdoctoral Fellows. He then joined the faculty at UCLA in 2004 and has been there since.
Okay, thank you, Matt, for that nice introduction. Let me share my screen. Let me see. That's not what I wanted to share. You guys can see the slide here, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, let me go to the slideshow mode. Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming to the session, and thank you so much for the invitation to speak here. And as Matt said in the introduction, I'm a faculty member at UCLA in the Department of Biological Chemistry. We're a basic science department in the School of Medicine. So we don't have any clinical duties, but everyone in the department is doing basic science research related to basic biological processes that might be interrupted in various diseases that affect humans. And I'm happy to talk about that more if some of you are interested. My email is listed here. If you just Google my name, you should basically find out everything about me. And that's my lab website is also there if you're interested about learning about our work or contact me through this website. So if you're wondering where I get my weird last name, it's because my family is from Kurdistan. So Kurdistan is a region in Middle East that spans 4 countries between Iran, north of Iraq, Turkey, and Syria. My grandfather was born in a city called Sanandaj, which is in the western part of Iran. But when he was a kid, they moved to Tehran, and that's where my father was born, and where I was born myself. So that's the oral history. I actually had a chance to confirm this through genetics. So I did 23andMe, and as you can see, my genetics came back Kurdish, although this was from my maternal side. So we won't get into that, but anyway, at least half of me is from Kurdistan, and so that's where my last name comes from. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my immigration story, how I ended up here, and sort of weave in my education through that, and then I conclude by telling you some of the things that didn't go the way I wanted them to, and then open it up for question and answer. So I was born in Tehran in 1970, in the previous century. And in terms of the events that were sort of affected my childhood and my upbringing, I experienced the 1979 Iranian Revolution that overthrew a dynasty that some could say that it dates back about 2,500 years of Iranian history, and brought about the Islamic Republic to Iran, which to this day has a grip on the country. Soon after the revolution, the 8-year war with Iraq started, which was a very lengthy war, and as you can see, a lot of my teenage years were coincident with the events of Iran-Iraq war. So this war really played a significant role in shaping my experiences and my upbringing. I left Iran in 1987. I'll talk more about that. So I just left before the end of the war, but sort of experienced most of it. And when I left, I was in 11th grade. So again, a lot of my primary education was in Iran, and that did shape who I am today, and sort of how I started thinking about my career and where I ended up. So my childhood was essentially uneventful. I was born to sort of a middle-class family. In the summertime, we would go to the north of Iran to Caspian Sea. Here is a picture of me around 1973, 74 with my dad. And I just actually realized my mom is in the background here. And so I sort of grew up in a family. Both of my parents were working. My dad had been educated in the U.S., so he spoke English, which was always a source of pride for me, and he taught me English from a very early age, although I kind of resisted it at the very beginning. When I was little, we moved to a small house in Iran, and I don't have a lot of pictures of me in that house. This is one of the pictures I could find. This is our backyard, and the reason I mention this is because this backyard really played a really important role in me sort of developing my scientific interests in a way that I probably didn't understand at the time, but now that I look back and in hindsight, I can see that this was sort of an important playground for me, because first of all, what you can see in the picture are a lot of chickens and cats that I had as pets in this backyard, and a lot of sort of small quote-unquote scientific experiments that I performed in this backyard, which, when I look back, I realized that's sort of where my sort of interest in science and especially in biology was seeded. all of this changed in 1979 when the revolution in Iran happened, and there was a significant upheaval in the society. There were protests. There was, gunfire. There was, people were being killed. You could see blood on the streets a lot of times, and I'm showing a picture of what the protest would look like. With pictures of Khomeini at the time. If you don't know, he was the first and perhaps the most prominent leader of the revolution, and he brought in the sort of the Islamic flavor to the Iranian revolution that was trying to free itself of the previous dynasty. And so these scenes were not uncommon as I was growing up, and I was part of it. And then soon after the revolution, when everything was sort of felt up in the air, and the laws were changing fast, the rules, the policies were changing fast. The Iraq attacked Iran, and that started an 8-year war of attrition that really affected everything we did. And so these are pictures that I took from the web, because I don't have pictures myself, but these are very, very similar to some of the experiences we had in school, places we would go for shopping or other forms of education. Sandbags everywhere to protect against bombings that would happen at night. And war, when it becomes lengthy, has a funny impact on you. Like it becomes part of your life, right? So you go do your shopping, you go to school, you come back, you play with your friends, and then at night there may be a couple of bombings. You survive that, and then you start over again. So it became part of our lives, and it, to a point where sometimes you wouldn't even notice these sandbags. And then the war got really, really bad towards 1987, 1988, where scenes like this from Tehran were again not uncommon, where the bombing intensified. And this was around the time where my parents decided that we should leave Iran and immigrate to the U.S. essentially for a better life and other opportunities. But during the revolution and the Iraq War, I basically did my education through junior high and high school, and that's where I really developed a passion for biology. I had a very strong and a core group of friends that I used to hang out. Here's a picture of some of them. Because of the revolution, we had lots of discussions about the best form of government, and is communism better than capitalism, or vice versa, and what we want and all that stuff. And we felt like we knew everything, and I think those discussions really played a significant role in the way I started to see the world and grow up much faster than you would normally, without these events. One of my close friends, shown here, his eyes are closed. Unfortunately, he passed away from COVID a couple of years ago. But he played a significant role in developing actually my scientific interest, because we used to always discuss evolution versus creation, and try to bring evidence for each other, and those type of discussions were really important in developing my ideas, my interests, and so forth. And I thought because of my interest in biology, I used to read biology books, anything that I could find. Obviously, this is before computers and internet, and so information was hard to come by. But I sort of voraciously consumed whatever I could find, and I considered myself a biology guru in my high school. And then we had a biology competition, and that was a humbling defeat for me. Here's a picture of me coming at 7th place in this competition. And for me, this was terrible, and you can see in my face how upset I am. But you can see this picture is my biology teacher, Dr. Yusufi, who I can credit with being the first person who really cultivated my sense of curiosity in biology. He had been trained in Europe, and so had sort of a Western understanding of research and scientific inquiry. And he really tried to teach us that. And I have to credit him with sort of, flaming the fire in me to pursue biology. What you can see in these pictures are pictures of the various mullahs and Khomeini himself here. These pictures were everywhere, in every classroom, everywhere you turned. They had some form of these pictures in your face. And, this is what oppression looks like on an everyday basis, right? They try to remind you of who is in charge. But despite this form of control, again, we were discussing, topics that were forbidden, right? Evolution, biology, where humans come from, and that sort of discussion. And so it was in this backdrop of sort of an Islamic society that's trying to inculcate a way of thinking in you that sort of our interest in questioning things developed. And so to me, it was an interesting time. And I look back, I have fond memories. I don't remember all the bad things that happened, but this was sort of my upbringing. As you can see, this is in August 1986, and about a year later after that, I left Iran. Because I was of an age that I was eligible for military service, and also because my family was of a Jewish background, I was forbidden to leave Iran. So I had to escape Iran in 1987 through Pakistan. There are people who live in the area between Iran and Pakistan, which are neighbors towards the south east of Iran, and the people there, make a living by smuggling things across the border, guns, medicine, people, whatever they can find. So you find somebody who knows somebody, and that introduces you to one of these smugglers, and they essentially take you across the border to Pakistan. Obviously, when you're escaping, you're leaving the country illegally, but also you're entering Pakistan or other country illegally. And so we were unfortunate, we got caught by the Pakistani police, and the group of us that was together. I was by myself, by the way. My family just sent me, they said, go to America. And I was with another group of people that were also escaping Iran for various reasons. We spent 3.5 days in jail trying to negotiate with the police. Finally, paid enough bribes to let us go, and we were released in the middle of the night. Eventually, we made our way to Karachi, and then from there, I obtained my papers through UN, and went to Vienna. I spent about, I think, 9 months or so in Vienna waiting for a refugee visa to come to US, and then I ended up in New York. I had left Iran at the beginning of high school, at the beginning of my senior year in high school, and so even though I had lost a year, I wanted to finish high school to complete that part of my education. And so I ended up in Franklin Roosevelt High School in Brooklyn, New York. And this was also a very interesting experience because growing up in Iran, we used to watch Western movies. We watched, bootlegged versions of Baywatch. So my image of America was these, sort of expansive landscapes with beautiful ocean and golden sand and palm trees. And here I was in the middle of Brooklyn that didn't look anything like that. But then I realized I was on the quote unquote the wrong coast, and that the palm trees are on the other coast. And then I moved to LA in 1989. So just to show you a little bit of what my trip looked like. So this is an area of Middle East that includes Iran, Pakistan on this side, and Afghanistan over here. This city here is Zahedan, is sort of the last major city before you hit the border to Pakistan. And so I flew from Tehran, which is somewhere up here, to Zahedan. And then our goal was to basically travel along this path to this city called Quetta, where there was a United Nations office at the time, and apply for refugee status. I don't remember, I obviously don't know the exact approximate route, but this area is very mountainous and includes sort of the mountainous region that the Taliban were recently occupying. At that time, the Afghani Mujahideen, these are sort of the Afghani soldiers, were fighting Russia, and US was supporting them. So they were very supportive of the and proud of their connection to the United States. And I remember running into some of these Mujahideen in some of these mountains, and when I would tell them I'm going to the US, they would start chanting USA, USA. And so completely different time from now. If you go there now, you don't want to say you're from US. So anyway, I ended up in Quetta and became a United Nations refugee. And from there, I went to Karachi, which is the south of Pakistan, and to Vienna, and eventually made my way to New York. So after I finished high school in New York, I came to LA and attended Santa Monica College for 2 years. And then I transferred to UCLA. I majored in biochemistry because I was interested in both biology and chemistry. And then I went to medical school, and I'm happy to talk more about this. But when you grow up in Iran, there wasn't at the time sort of the understanding of the scientific enterprise that you could become a scientist and make a living as a scientist. So if you have any interest in biology in any way, they call you doctor when you're like 5 or 6 years old. So I always felt like I had to go to medical school, and didn't really think about it once I came to the US. And so I ended up at medical school about 5 years after I came to the US. But once I was in medical school, I realized that I really missed the bench. I want to be in the lab. I want to do more science. And I really like the science of medicine. And so I did a very short residency. Well, actually, I should change this to internship in pathology, because I only did the first year and a couple of months after that. And then decided to do a postdoctoral fellowship at UCLA in chromatin biology. And I'll talk briefly about that later on. And then I was fortunate to be offered a faculty position at UCLA, and I've been here since 2004. By the way, at Harvard Medical School, I met Dr. Huidones or Dr. Q that will be talking to you soon. So when you guys see him, say, tell him I said hello. He has an incredible story. And throughout this, my education, I had different research experiences that really affected the way I thought about my career and the choices I made. So as an undergrad, I worked with, as Matt said, with Dr. Don Cram on host gas chemistry. This was like pure organic chemistry. even though I was interested in going to medical school, Dr. Cram had won the 1987 Nobel Prize. And when I had the chance to work in his lab, I couldn't turn it down, to be able to be in his lab and sort of experience what the culture is and how he approached science was an opportunity that I couldn't turn down. So I worked in the lab for about 2.5 years, and in fact, I extended my undergraduate education by an extra year because I wanted to complete some of the projects that I had started in his lab, and this is where really my my sort of passion for science came out and blossomed. He was sort of instrumental in that. I obviously started working in his lab for the wrong reasons. The reason I wanted to do research is because I wanted to go to medical school and I wanted to beef up my resume. And so in the back of my head, I was like, okay, I go to his lab, it'll be great. He'll write me a great recommendation letter. I'll get into a good medical school. And but once I was in the lab, I sort of realized that that's where I belong, and I sort of guided my education so to sort of be in the lab as much as possible. So I started for the wrong reasons, but I continued for the right reasons. And I did quite well. I ended up getting the UCLA College of Letters and Science Scholar Award in 1994. This was like a big deal with a black tie dinner at the Beverly Hills Hotel. And here's a picture of me with Don Cram, my advisor at the time. Unfortunately, he passed away in the early 2000. This is his wife. She also passed away around the same time. And here's my organic chemistry teacher who actually introduced me to Don. I had taken 3 courses with Dr. Betty Lucet, who was a lecturer at the organic chemistry department at UCLA. And I had done well in her class, and she was the one who told me I should go work for Don. And that really changed the trajectory of my career, my life as I look back on it. And these are my parents. You can see my dad has a little bit more gray hair than the original picture, but they've also been very, very supportive of me throughout different steps of my life. In medical school, I also stayed an extra year to work in a basic biology lab. I worked with Sam Lee on identifying p53 target genes. p53 had just been cloned at the time, and it was the hottest thing. It's still one of the main areas of research, but I didn't follow in that area. So after doing my internship in pathology, I did postdoctoral work with Michael Grunstein on chromatin biology. So chromatin is this complex of DNA and histones that help package the DNA in eukaryotic nucleus and plays a role in many processes. And I was really attracted to that, partly because of the work I'd done as a pathology resident. I ended up getting a few papers here and receiving the UCLA Chancellor's Award for postdoctoral fellows. Here's Dr. Grunstein at the time. And since then, he's retired. He's won numerous awards for some of the pioneering work he's done. And I was fortunate enough to be able to contribute to some of that work. And that choice has really affected the way I do research because I continue to work on histones, on chromatin as a faculty member in my own lab and to this date. So I'm particularly interested in histones and the roles they have in cellular metabolism and physiology, and we're especially focused on copper metabolism. And in the context of both evolution of eukaryotes and the potential effects they have on human disease. I just want to touch on a little bit of science before I conclude. I think my greatest challenge, as far as my career is concerned, still lies ahead. This is a paper that we published about 3 years ago, where we showed that the the core of the histones around which the DNA wraps, right? The core of the of chromatin, in fact, is an oxidoreductase enzyme that reduces copper from copper 2 to copper 1, and this is really important for many biological processes, including mitochondrial respiration and energy production. And so this was to many people still an unusual and somewhat surprising finding, and to be honest, I'm not sure how many people actually believe that believe this claim, and so it's really incumbent upon us to provide more evidence to show how this affects the biology of eukaryotes, human cells, and potentially have contributed to our evolution. And so we had a hard time publishing this paper. This paper took about 6 years or so of my life to complete and publish, and obviously a significant number of people, students and postdocs, worked on this project, and really contributed significantly to its completion. And so as I look ahead, I think I have this big challenge in front of me that I'm prepared to take on. And I think everything I told you, from both my upbringing and experiencing a war and a revolution and escaping Iran and all of that, it sort of comes to crystallize in this moment for me going forward, trying to show how this activity has very, very important consequences for both understanding human biology, human evolution, and human disease. So, I've attended talks like this when I was in your shoes, and it, when I look back, obviously I can connect all the dots and tell you about the moments that made a difference in my life. But to be honest, although I had some plans, a lot of these things also happened to me, and I think it's really important to understand that for people to succeed, you really have to do the best that you can do with what's in front of you. And I told you about examples of some of the accolades and prizes and successes that I had, but not all of it was successful. So there were also a lot of failures, and so I wanted to share that with you to demonstrate that it's not all good or happy or whatever, and not, again, all of it was super planned. A lot of it was just, I had some idea I wanted to do, where to go, what to do, and sort of went in that general direction, and then went with whatever was the best of the options I had at the time. So, for example, when I applied to medical school, I got into Harvard, which was great, but I got rejected from Johns Hopkins, UCSF, UCSD, Cornell, Columbia, a bunch of other schools. So while I was getting into some colleges, a lot of rejections were coming my way, and so I was worried that I actually wouldn't be able to attend medical school for a little bit, because I was getting a lot of rejections. When I was looking for postdoctoral labs to do research, not many labs were very receptive, because I was coming from an MD background. I didn't have a PhD, and a lot of the faculty thought I was not serious, so I wanted to just maybe spend some time in the lab and then go back and finish my clinical work. And so really, 2 labs offered me position. One was Dr. Grunstein, and another one that I want to mention kind of hesitantly. And so I ended up doing what I like, but again, it wasn't like I had like a million options to choose from. And then as a faculty member, my UCLA was my first choice. I wanted to stay here because my family's from LA. I played a lot of soccer, and so I wanted to, take advantage of the weather and play year round, and didn't want to, leave my soccer buddies, and so I ended up getting a job at UCLA. But But at the same time, I was not considered for faculty positions at a lot of places: Berkeley, UCSF, UCI, UCSD. Some of these places I interviewed at. Some of the places didn't even invite me for an interview. So again, at that time, it was not clear where I would end up, and some of the sort of positive news was mixed in with a lot of negative news. When I first sent in my first R01 application, this is sort of a grant application that you get from NIH, the funding you get from NIH to support your research. It was triaged, and triage is like it's not so bad right now, but back then it was basically, it wasn't even reviewed. Like they just looked at it and said, this is not even good enough to be reviewed. And so even though I had all these grand plans for what I wanted to do, my first application was essentially passed over. And then my second application was, it improved. They actually reviewed it, but it got a bad score. And so, but I learned how to write grant applications and so forth. And so eventually got better at it. But again, much of what I've told you has been in the context of what I call failures. And I think it's really important to learn from your failures, understand also what your weaknesses are, what your strengths are. And I think successful people put themselves in position where their strengths show, and more importantly, their weaknesses don't. And so if I have to give you one advice, is that find out who you are, find out what you're good at, find out what you're not good at, and so put yourself in positions where what you're good at is an advantage and what you're not good at is not an issue. Okay, and then finally, none of this is possible without having a very supportive family and friends. And I won't go through a lengthy thank you to my extended Persian family. And I have like probably 200 cousins, some of which I probably still haven't met. But I just wanted to thank my wife, Orly, and my son, Sina, for supporting me for the last 10 or 12 years. And then I'll stop there. I'm happy to take questions.
The first question we have is, what do you think are factors in the med school application that are non-negotiable?
What are the factors that are non-negotiable? Okay, so I'm not exactly sure what the question is getting at, but I can tell you, I could tell you a few things, both from the experience of having applied to medical school, and also I used to direct the MD PhD program at UCLA, the MSDP program. So I was on the other side in terms of admitting students to the medical school. And I continue to do interviews of prospective medical school applicants. So the medical school application is quite different from back then. But I think the most important thing is that you fill out these applications and be able to get across who you are as a person and what you've accomplished. I think one of the mistakes that I see some of the students make, or some of the prospective students make, is that they try to tell us things that they think we want to hear. And that's not the case. Although there seems to be maybe a formula for getting into medical school or MD PhD programs, but really a lot of the top medical schools are looking to have a diverse class, not just in terms of ethnicity, but also in terms of background, in terms of what you've accomplished, in terms of what your interests are. Because both in terms of the physician workforce and the physician scientist workforce, we need people who have different personalities, because you will practice medicine or you will do science based on your personality, and it's really important that all personalities are represented in both both science and medicine. And so if I have to give you one advice, is that be yourself, be able to convey what you've done, and don't think about what they're trying to hear or find out. The other thing that's really important is that a lot of the medical school, at least the top medical schools, I'm not talking about the top 2 or 3, I'm talking about the top 15 or 20 medical schools, right? That they typically value people who've done something substantial in their lives, right? So if you've gone and done research in one lab and you've been there for 3 years, it's much more impressive than having spent 6 weeks here, 6 weeks there, 5 weeks here, 5 weeks there. And the reason is that it's anything when you started, it's easy, right? But then run into problems, and that's the persistence to solve through those problems is what sometimes the medical school looks for. So I can tell you in my medical school class, obviously I had a lot of research background because of my interest in science, but we had people who had done very, very different things. One of my classmates was a chef for some California mayor for like several years. Some had gone to the military, and others had done different things. And so it's really important to follow your passion. Some are musicians, very serious musicians, right? And so I think in preparing to go to medical school, you should do what you want and be good at it, but then go deep in it, right? So that when you talk about it, right, it's not a cursory or a shallow, doesn't come from a shallow place, but from a deeper place where you actually show who you are, right? And trust me, the medical schools will value that quite a bit.
Just making a little plug. Actually, Dr. Gijola is going to come in December and give a talk. So
yeah, so he's a current MSTP director, and I'm sure he'll tell you some of the stuff that I mentioned. And yeah, so it's important to be who you are, but then and then pursue your passion, but develop it to a point where there is substance, right? We want people with substance in any field, anything, right? So I think that's what's important.
So this is a follow-up question I have with somebody who it always comes up in our session. How much research do you need to have that if you want to do an MD PhD? Is it just 6 weeks, or what kind of research and what kind of contribution that needs to be made?
Yeah, so look, for MD PhD, probably you need more than 6 weeks of research, right? Because we want to make sure that you understand what science is like, right? One of the major problems with MD PhD training is that has a very high attrition rate. So a lot of people just drop out before they, actually get to an MD PhD position where they do medically relevant research. And so most programs look for people who have shown that kind of commitment to science, right? You don't need to have a paper. It's good to have a paper, but you really don't need to have a paper. Most people who get into MSTPs don't have a paper. But what's really important is that when you go for an interview and they ask you, well, what have you done in terms of research, that you show that you really understand what you worked on, right? So I can tell you a couple of examples, right? So, I would ask the applicant, say, what do you work on? And then they start in the middle of an experiment, right? Whereas I would ask somebody else and they say, well, before I came to this lab, there was a postdoc who asked this question. They found this and that, and that determined the direction of the research. One of the questions that came up was this. And so when I joined the lab, I was asked to follow up on this question, right? So it tells you a very, very different picture of how these two people think, right? So one kind of understands the context in which they're doing research. They understand the history behind it, the importance of their question, how their question fits into the bigger picture. as opposed to another person who just tells me about the mechanics of what they're doing, right? So, and some of that, look, it takes time, it takes experience and persistence. So, you know, I can tell you that six weeks is probably not enough, but you also don't have to do 3 years of research, right? Again, just enough so that you can show that you have a sort of a deep understanding of this. I can tell you as an interviewer, as an interviewer, I try to push. Sorry, I got distracted because my son is saying hi in the chat. But as an interviewer, you know, we try to push the applicants to the edge of their knowledge, right? Because we understand there's some, you know, students prepare to come to these interviews, and so again, what we're looking for is to see how you sort of think about, you know, whatever research you've done, when you get pushed beyond what you have thought about in terms of your everyday work in the lab, right? Again, some of that comes with time, commitment, and so forth. So that's what's important, right? Not just like I have a paper or don't have a paper or whatever, if that makes sense.
All right. Our second question we have is, how would you recommend a pre-med manage their time, considering the highly competitive field right now with many things a pre-med's plate has?
How to manage your time. You know, so I mean, look, these are. So I spend a lot of time in the lab, right? I still spend a lot of time in the lab because I love coming to the lab and doing experiments, and I can't wait to find out what the experiments tell me, right? So I've never any single day of my life come to the lab thinking I'm going to work. Like I really consider this as a privilege. I'm playing. It's really fun. It can be stressful, but I've never felt like I'm coming to work. And so so I think you have to pick something where that you're passionate about, right? So that it doesn't feel like constraining, right? That, oh, like I have to manage my time. You know, I came to the lab, but I also you know, hung out with my friends. I played soccer. I, you know, went hiking, and, you know, I had lots of friends, and we went out, and birthdays and so forth. And so it's really important to you know, find the area that you're passionate in and then go deep. And so within that context, then, because you don't have to do a million different things, I think you can manage your time, you know, to have sort of a good quote unquote work-life balance in your life. Again, I think the mistake that people make is that they look at an application, they think, oh, I have to volunteer in 6 different places, and then, you know, go to Africa and like feed children, and then you know, build a hospital in India and whatever. But you don't need to do all of those things. You know, do what you like and what you're good at, and then persist in it and go deep. And I think that will distinguish your applications from everyone else. Next question.
All right. So the next question that we have is, my dream is in becoming, there's an attendee whose dream is becoming a physician, and she's considering one of the values of freedom. And so how much would healthcare, the medical school path, align with freedom and independence realistically?
How much it align with freedom and independence? You mean like from a personal standpoint, or?
I'm assuming it's like from like having, in terms of like work-life balance. I'm interpreting as like a work-life balance, like in terms of freedom, like afterwards, like being a physician and being able to maintain that work-life balance.
Yeah. I mean, look, it depends. It really depends on it depends on field of medicine. It depends, you know, exactly what you do. Some fields are much more demanding, some are less demanding. You can work in an academic setting, you can have a lab, you can work in an office and the community. They're all very, very different. There isn't really a standard answer to this, but my recommendation is that if you're looking at a particular career and you're already thinking about whether it affects my freedom or my independence or like other things I want to do, then you probably should rethink that career path, because I think that in the US we have this opportunity to do a lot of different things, and I think in almost every field, if you're good at it, the system takes you up and you can make progress. And so I think it's important to balance those things. Like if I spend a Saturday night in the lab because I wanted to finish my experiment, and all my friends are at some party or birthday party, I never felt like I'm missing out. And so I think it's important to be to have that feeling. If you feel like you're missing out because you're at work, then I'm not sure. A lot of fields of medicine is probably not for you. But there are fields of medicine where it's more conducive to having a more sort of a clear schedule. Some of my friends, for example, do more subspecialty trainings. Maybe if you're a dermatologist, you have more free time, or if you're a emergency room physician, you work for 8 hours, but when you leave, that's it. You leave. There's no more patients calling you and so forth. And so within medicine, there's a lot of room to pick sort of a subspecialty that fits sort of the lifestyle that you want.
Alrighty, next question. Which fact do you think can be outstanding as an international student to appeal to people in the field since it is getting saturated currently?
I'm not sure if there's a difference between international or sort of domestic, applicants. I mean, the people are people, right? And so wherever you come from, I think again, medical school, graduate schools, and so forth, they look for what you've accomplished, and sometimes if you haven't had the opportunities that other people have had, right, then the school is quite aware of that people start at different places, right? And so again, one of the things that we look at is what we call distance traveled, right? So how much opportunities you had at beginning and what you did with them, right? So if you were born to a wealthy family with physician parents and scientists and went to the lab at the age of 6 and so forth, right? It's not necessarily a bad thing or a good thing, but what we look at is like what you did with those opportunities, right? So if you were born in a country with some of these advantages missing, didn't have access to a lab or good education, again, I think the reviewers look at that, but what they want to see is see how much you traveled from where you started, and so that becomes an important determinant of trying to understand who you are as a person and what the likelihood of your success is if you were accepted to that program.
Next question we have, what do you think you did well during your undergraduate, and what would you have done differently? Major, extracurriculars, lifestyle, etc.
So again, I think the best choice I made was to work in this laboratory that I mentioned, and both in terms of growing up scientifically, but also understanding that that being a scientist and doing science can be a way of living, right? I really didn't know that before. Like, I understood science, but I didn't understand how science worked and how the enterprise was like set up. So that was really important. What I would do differently, that question comes up in different contexts, and I have a more nuanced answer to that. I am doing what I'm doing right now, is sort of what I imagine what I would be doing as a scientist. The discoveries that we've made, the type of work that we're doing, and so I've ended up where perhaps perhaps what I had imagined as an undergraduate, right? So, but that's a product of all the good decisions that I made and some of the bad decisions I made and some of the mistakes that happened and all the yeses that I received and all the no's that I received, right? So I can't say that I would change anything, because I feel like the successes were as important as the failures to get me to where I am, and so I'll just leave it at that. I think it's important to explore who you are. I think it's important to express yourself in whatever field you go in, and not be afraid of making mistakes. I think making mistakes is not the issue. The more important thing is that what you learn from those mistakes and how you respond to them, that really makes you as a person, right? And I can tell you that some of you may have some of these experiences, but I don't remember a lot of these great events. But what I do remember is the moment where I embarrassed myself or didn't do the right things, right? Because sort of the emotional register with that is so strong that you always remember it. And those are really, really important. The times where I should have been prepared, but I wasn't, or I should have given a different answer and I didn't. And sometimes I still go back and relive those moments. So I guess to summarize what I said is that I think it's important to make some choices, within reason, obviously, and not be afraid if there are sometimes there are mistakes, because I think those experiences will tell you what not to do, where not to go, what situations you shouldn't put yourself in, and those are very, very important determinants of future success.
All right, so our next question is, what do you think was the most important thing in your application that made you get into Harvard Medical School?
So I can tell you that it was not my MCAT scores, okay? I had very, very average MCAT scores, and I had a really good GPA, but I mean, with that kind of MCAT scores, I'm not sure if in today's world your application would even get considered. But I think what made a big difference was the recommendation letter from Dr. Cram, right? He later shared that recommendation letter with me after I had applied to medical school, and some of the things there he said in there really first of all, it made me feel embarrassed to some extent, but then I realized why I get in. Sort of he compared me to himself when he was younger, and so if you have that kind of a evaluation, I think some of the schools will really put an emphasis on that, right? So I think I didn't get into some of the schools. I'm pretty sure I didn't get into UCSD and UCSF because my MCAT scores were not very good. I'm terrible at multiple choice exams. Like I look at all options and I can come up with a reason for why all of them are true. And so I'm just not good at multiple choice exams. So I didn't really do well in my MCAT scores. They were just maybe just above average. But I think it was my research experience with Dr. Cram that really helped me get into Harvard Medical School.
Our next question is, as a student, what made you stand out as an applicant? And as a med school admission advisor, what stands out to you?
So again, I want to see, when I read an application, I want to have a sense of who this person is, right? I don't want to read a generic, application. Yet, a lot of people like fit their personal statements into some preconceived format, just forget about all these things. Be who you are, write a good, simple essay, very simple sentences, work on the content, and so if you get a really good sense of who this person is in the application, then you have a really good chance of getting an interview. And really at the interview stage, especially for MD PhD programs, all you have to do is be as good as the application, right? If you're as good as the application, the chances are you'll get accepted, right? And so again, my recommendation is that don't overthink these applications. Talk about who you are, what you like, who you want to be. Don't think about what you think they want to hear, and I think you'll be fine.
Alrighty, next question. How did you not give up after so many rejections? What kept you going?
I mean, what else are you gonna do? So, yeah, look, it's so I showed you the rejections, but in the middle, like, there was also some successes. I mean, it's one of the first medical school I got into was University of Chicago, right? And very good school. And so despite all these rejections, I was like, okay, worst comes to worst, I'm going to Chicago. It'll be cold for 5 years, but 4 or 5 years, but so be it, right? And so I tried to get into the best school possible, and then decide between my options. And but like, let's say if I hadn't got into any medical school, I probably would have just spent more time doing research and applied again. Maybe I would have realized that graduate school was an option. I would have gone to graduate school, but I think it's important to persist for what you want. We've had students who have applied once or twice, and they keep applying, and some of them eventually get in either to their school of choice or eventually get in someplace, right? Again, I go back to what I said at the beginning. I think it's really important to make the best of what's in front of you, right? That's what successful people do. And obviously medical schools are ranked, and you want to get into a top medical school, not because there's necessarily a better learning experience and so forth, but because your classmates tend to end up in leadership positions, or have sort of impactful stories like Dr. Q that will be coming. We were classmates, as I mentioned. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that better the higher ranked schools generate better doctors, right? Being a doctor has a lot to do with being compassionate, having sympathy, being able to listen, have an intuitive understanding of people, right? And so, when somebody tells you, oh, this person is a good doctor, or that person is not a good doctor, they don't tell you that they're a good doctor because they went to this medical school or that medical school. They tell you they're a good doctor because they care, they make good diagnoses and so forth. And so again, you want to become a doctor, get into a medical school, right? Get into the best medical school for you, but then once you're in, then really the rest is really up to you, because most places will not be an impediment to you becoming who you want to be.
Yeah, I mean, I work in the ER, and I could tell you when somebody's in a car accident and comes in, they don't ask which medical school your physician has gone to. They care that if you listen to them, diagnose, you know, make them feel better and be discharged. Now that's like more of a clinical setting, but
No, sure. I mean, look, it's I always joke around. It's like, there were some people in my class at Harvard Medical School that I probably would not go to them if my life depended on it. uh, but so I think it's important to look at human beings from a different lens than just their education and their resume.
Next question we have is for someone who has zero background in research, what, how, where do you think is the best way to start doing research?
I mean, well, as an undergraduate, I'm assuming as a pre-med, as an undergraduate student, look, you first have to maybe explore a little bit and see what you like, what area you like, right? Do you like, I don't know, biochemistry, biology? Do you like microbiology? Do you like immunology? Sort of, have some sense of what you want to do, and then you just have to, whatever school you're at, you just have to try to go knock on professors' doors and try to find opportunities to do research. At a place like UCLA, there's lots of labs to be able to find your way in. At other places, there may be less opportunities. There may be more sort of programs that you can then take advantage of. But look, I started in an organic chemistry lab with zero lab experience. But I think the most important thing is that once you start someplace, is commit to it and show that you're making progress. Most mentors, we love to teach people who learn, and when you see somebody learn and make progress, it's really satisfying. And so people enjoy teaching students who show interest, who show progress, and so forth. And so yeah, just find a place to get in. It's not easy, but keep at it. So
just making a plug in November, Dr. Milgram from the NIH, she has a host of summer programs for community college, post-bac, college students, medical students. So come in to your presentation because she's trying to recruit you. And there's a lot of these summer programs. We have had some of them come and speak. I know that Dr. Olujuwon is going to talk about their summer program at UCLA, but a lot of these summer programs want you there and they pay you pretty good money to be a researcher. So, and the good thing is that if you do research in one of these labs, and if you don't live in LA or Washington, DC, but if you ask them, hey, I'm going back to school in San Diego and I want to do research through the year, I would tell you that getting an email from, and more likely they know each other, everybody knows each other. Getting an email from saying, hey, there's a student, they were with me this summer. I would tell you it's a lot easier than cold emailing people out of the blue. I don't know. And Dr. Kurdistani could probably attest to that
I
more
mean,
than
sure,
me.
it always helps. I tell you some of the things you shouldn't do when you're looking for research, and this happens to me all the time. It's like I get an email where, um, you know, my name is in a different font than the rest of the email, right? So clearly there was like some generic email they wrote, and then they plugged in different faculty members' name there, right? And so, if you want to reach out, write an email, but write something that's personal, right? Why you want to go to that lab, right? Don't copy paste some line from their website. Spend a little bit of time and make a case. And again, that's what's important, right? And once you get into the lab, then it's also important to understand whether the lab is for you or not, right? So if you go to a lab and you're having a miserable time, leave, go do something else. That's really important, right? If it's not for you, I think you tell the PIs, look, I tried this is not for me. I want to do more of this or more of that, and they may even help you get into a better lab that matches your sort of personality and what you want and what you like better than the lab you're in.
All right, so our next question is, did the low acceptance rates from applying to med school and like the competitiveness to get into med school affect you at all and your confidence levels? And should it affect us as undergraduate students applying to med school?
Does the competition affect your confidence level? Is that the question? I'm not. Yeah. Yeah, it does. Of course it does. I mean, look, when I transferred from Santa Monica College to UCLA, the classes at Santa Monica College were maybe at most like 50, 60 people, right? And then I come here and my first organic chemistry course, there's like 385 people in the class. And you walk in and it's intimidating, right? And so it's not bad to feel that, and it does affect your confidence, but again, do the best of what's in front of you, right? And I think it's important to again, when you have a setback or you have a failure, to look at that and say, look, why I failed at this, right? It's because what is it about this thing that doesn't fit me? And then in your next step, avoid that, right? So look, I didn't do a lot of things. I mean, I do research because I really love doing research, but I also picked my area of research very, very carefully, especially when I was a postdoc, right? Like, I was considering maybe doing something in immunology, but I can read the immunology paper, I understand it, but I walk away from that paper and it kind of evaporates from my head, right? So I realized, look, it's not for me, because it's hard for me to read, and I really have to put a lot of time and effort, as opposed to when I was reading the literature in chromatin. Even though it was the first time I'm reading it, it felt like I knew this stuff before, right? And so I knew that it sort of fit me and who I am, and I liked it, and I went with that. And so I think that it does affect your confidence. Like, what do you do with it? Just take a deep breath, suck it up, and move on. I mean, I really don't have a deep sort of recommendation here, other than that, look, life is hard. It's complicated, but the most important thing is to make the best of what's in front of you. And I guarantee you that the system will take you up if you do well at every step, wherever you're at.
I would also say that there's a statistic that I want to share, is 100% of people that don't apply don't get in. So if you're not willing to take that risk, it's going to be impossible. But the people that do it, is that it's a risk. You have to take that risk. To and it may be competitive, but if you don't try, you don't know. I mean, Dr. Kurdistani said that he got rejected from a lot of medical schools, but he got into Harvard, and so
Oh, Zubin, actually, this reminds me. When I first started the medical school class, right? And I mean, all of every single person I ran into was brilliant, right? And I was like, what am I doing here? I mean, everybody's gonna eat me alive here, and it really affects your confidence. And in fact, when we had heart to heart with some of our classmates, and maybe Dr. Q can share this as well, everybody felt like that. Everybody felt like, I don't belong here, and like everybody's so much better than me. But really, I can tell you that probably the most important lesson that I learned at Harvard Medical School was understanding where I am relative to everyone else, right? So if now I know what it means to be organized, for example, because my histology, lab mate in medical school was the most organized person I've ever seen in my life, right? I know what it means to have photographic memory because I've seen people who read things once and they remember it for the rest of their lives, right? But then what you realize is that you have a combination of things that it's certainly unique and nobody has that combination, right? So so that combination includes your strengths and your weaknesses. And again, it's important to understand that and put that to work in a sense, right? So I wasn't the smartest person in my medical school class, but I could work hard and I made up for it by working hard, right? And finding places where I would excel at, right? And so I think to be able to cultivate your confidence is as important to know your strength as your weaknesses.
Yeah, imposter syndrome, everybody has it. I mean, everybody has it though.
Yes. I have it to this day. You can ask my wife.
Well, you had the confidence to ask her to marry you, right? So that says a lot. And she said yes. If you didn't ask,
All right, our next question we have is, do we always need a personal reason to pursue medicine? I feel that my reasoning is plain compared to others that have a stronger connection to medicine.
I mean, personal in a sense that you want to do it, right? For whatever reason, you like it, it's attractive to you. You've had, I mean, I wanted to do medicine thinking that, that I wanted to become a doctor, and really as I went through it, my perspective changed a little bit, right? I realized that I like the science of medicine much more than the sort of the practice of medicine. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed interacting with patients. It can be very satisfying, but then after an interaction, I would find myself thinking about my PCR reaction and what happened to my experiment in the lab. So my mind was elsewhere, right? So I followed that. But again, look, your connections are your connections, and I think it's important. Again, that would be a place where you you stand on what makes you want to become a physician. Okay, don't think about how it compares to other people. Make a case for why what's driving you is important and will push you forward.
Alrighty, our next question that we have is, how would one get started with research just to experience it? Also, if one just feels like if they're not good at chem, for example, but really want to be a doctor, what should you do? Study tips? Do you keep... Oh, sorry, that's the next question. You just keep with the one I gave you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we covered like how to find a lab. Basically you just have to go around and find different opportunities. Some are more programmatic, depending on the school you're in. Some of it you just have to like find labs, talk to people, word of mouth, are there labs that are looking for undergrads and so forth. If you're not good at organic chemistry, well, look, just work hard at it until you pass it and move on, right? There's not much you can do. Again, look, a lot of these things, I'm pretty sure a lot of physicians were not necessarily good at organic chemistry. They were good enough, right? But they were not necessarily great at it. So, you just have to work hard, study hard. I don't know, take advantage of tutoring and so forth to make it through and get to the next stage. But again, I think that in terms of the application, if there are weaknesses in terms of the areas of studies or the classes you've taken and so forth, you make up for that by showing what you're really good at, right? So if you like music, if you like cooking, if you like whatever, right? If you show that you have done substantial amount of work in that area, right? Then that says something about you, right? Look, people who review these applications, they understand that people have strengths or weaknesses, and it's not all about just doing well in organic chemistry and biology and math and physics and so forth. It's really about who you are as a person, and that has to come throughout the application. If you're not good at organic chemistry, do not major in chemistry, but you do have to take 1 year of organic chemistry. So that part you just have to, deal with and plow through and get to the other side.
So Dr. Benningham, who oversees the entire UC Health and is the provost of the University of California, she came and spoke, and she got a D in organic chemistry. She had to retake it, but look, she's now technically Dr. Kurdistani's bosses. So, and she said that nobody never asked her about getting a D. She got a D. She went and did it again, and now nobody ever asked her or anything about it. She's
and it doesn't mean she's a bad administrator. She's a good administrator, right? So it just some of these are sort of stage specific experiences. Once you get past them, you sort of move on, and nobody looks back. So
yeah, I mean, she practiced in infectious medicine clinically for a long time before going into administration. But yeah, she was like, nobody asked me anything, any job that I had, application medical school, residency, fellowship. So
it's meaningless at that point, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's about being resilient. I mean,
exactly.
Not everybody gets to be Donald Cram and win the Nobel Prize. You don't need to do that to get into medical school.
No, but look, actually, Don Cram had a very interesting life experience. He did what he liked. He loved organic chemistry and did it for the fact that it just that he loved it. And I actually remember it. He was giving a lecture once to undergraduates and was talking about some of the projects in his lab. This is at the time that I was in his lab, and somebody asked a question about what's the use of these experiments, and he was a little bit hard of hearing and couldn't hear the question. So somebody said, well, what is the use? What's the use? And then everybody in the room was yelling, what's the use? What's the use? And then he finally heard it, and I was feeling embarrassed for him, having to answer that question. But he gave the best answer. He said, it warms my heart when I do this experiment, right? And really, it comes down to that, where you just be good at what you do in the end, and how you got there, it really is not that meaningful in the end.
Right. So our next question is, did you take any gap years, or did you go straight into medical school?
I didn't take any gap years per se, but I did extend my undergraduate to 5 years instead of 4 years, so I can spend more time in the lab, because I wanted to really finish my projects and see where they ended up. In medical school, again, instead of 4 years, I took an extra year to do full-time research in a molecular biology lab. And so I didn't take gap years, as in going away from school, but I did extend it in a sense that I wanted to spend some sort of substantial chunk of time continuously in the lab, and so that's what I did.
When pursuing medicine/research, do you think your whole life will revolve around your work? Is there time for other things, hobbies?
There is, but it really depends on how much you let it take over your life, right? So I, as a researcher, I never, because I'm working on a problem, right? And it doesn't feel like work. I'm trying to figure out how nature works in this particular area, and so it's always in the back of my mind. It's brewing. I'm thinking. I come up with a question and I look it up online, and so it never leaves me. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. It's probably a little bit of both. But certainly both science and medicine are such that you can carve out a good portion of your life for having that balance. And so I don't think it's something that that necessarily requires you to commit 100%, your every waking moment. But you could if you wanted to, and some people do that, and that's what makes them happy. And so, but I think both medicine and science do give you the opportunity to do other things. Especially in science, but also to some extent in medicine. We get to go to conferences, give talks. So I actually travel quite a bit. Mostly to conferences or when I get invited to give talks, and you tack on a couple of days before and after, and you can sort of enjoy the places you are. But at the same time, you run into lots of different people from different backgrounds, both in terms of the kind of science they do, where they come from, and those are like really important experiences that enriches one's life.
Our next question is, how were you able to continue pursuing your dreams despite obstacles in your way? What helped you in your journey?
These are very good and big questions. Look, I have to sort of take a step back and say that I can only speak for myself. And obviously I am where I wanted to be, to have a lab, to be able to do research. So clearly the obstacles that I came across, right, I overcame them, but also I don't think any of them were to the point where, they certainly did not derail me, right? And, but I can understand that people have had experiences where, that could alter the way your path forward, right? So I grew up in Iran during the war, and like all those bombardments, none of the bombs fell on our family or on our house or nearby, and so there's a little bit of a luck involved with that, right? I don't know what I would have done if something bad had happened to my family or myself, and so I consider myself lucky that perhaps these obstacles were not to the level that really prevented me from doing what I wanted to do. I've always had my health. I never had serious health issues. Have had relatively sort of a safe or stable family environment. But some of these things can derail things, and I've seen it, and in some ways it's in the back of my mind that whatever I have could be lost in the blink of an eye, right? And so it's important to take full advantage of what's in front of you, and make the best of it, because you really don't know what tomorrow has in store for you. What keeps you going? I think it's your interest. As you're driven by what's inside you, what's burning inside, your passion for something, your interest in some area. And look, I understand some of you may not have this clear understanding of what you want to do. I didn't. I wanted to become a scientist, but I can't tell you that I had a very clear picture of what my life is like now back then, right? And when I look back, I can see that I sort of moved in this direction and planned my things in this direction, but I can't say that I had a very clear evidence or a clear understanding of this, right? And so if you don't know, right, you're ambivalent and things are not attractive to you in a way that they seem attractive to me now, right? Don't compare yourself to me, right? Just explore things, right? Be open to experiences, right? say yes more than no, and then eventually, hopefully, you'll as you grow older, you also might come across something that then fits with who you are, and then you can pursue that, right? So it's important. It's really important to understand that, right? That have a general understanding of what you want to do, and sort of explore that a little bit, right? Say yes to different experiences, and see where it takes you, and things become clearer as you grow a little bit older. But but don't take your health, don't take your stability in your life for granted, because those are important things that can really derail a person's career if they don't go right for you.
I mean, life is about taking risks, you know? I mean, Dr. Kurdistani took a risk to go from Iran to Pakistan to Vienna to New York and came to California. So, I mean, those are all risks. And obviously, some folks don't have to take risks of, going across, but I think it's following your passion and pursuing what you think is important. A few months ago, we had Dr. Karko, who just won the Nobel Prize recently, but she spoke that like she was fired and she got rejected for grants, and she ended up like having to commute to a job in Germany because while her husband still was in Philadelphia, and she made it work, and sure enough, she developed something that saved a lot of lives and has been recognized all over the world. So I mean, we guess you go listen to her talk, but I mean, it's people have to, it's resilience, and I think people have, and people take risks. She talked about her journey. She took a risk and brought her kid with $500 and a teddy bear, and where she is. And so, obviously, hopefully, most of you don't have to do those extreme things. You don't have to leave communism or your war-torn country, but that just means maybe showing up some more to your organic chemistry professor and saying, "Hey, I don't really understand this, and can you explain it to me?" Or applying for a job or research or program, or those are all like you have to do it to move forward.
Yeah,
And
exactly. I mean, I think the risk is important here because look, she didn't know this was gonna work, right? For COVID. I mean, nobody knew COVID was gonna come, right? And it could have easily not worked. What if they did the clinical trial with the mRNA vaccine and didn't work? And I can tell you before that, they had tried mRNA vaccines for a lot of different things. They were trying it for Ebola, it didn't work. They tried it for flu, it didn't work. In fact, the very original intent was to maybe apply it for cancer and wasn't as successful. So it could have easily been a case of where it just didn't work, right? So she didn't know, but she had an idea. That was her passion. She pursued it. She sacrificed, and I'm sure she enjoyed a lot of it, right? She enjoyed solving the problems that she solved, and look, a lot of success. Some of it has to do with being with getting lucky and being at the right place at the right time, and that part worked out for her and for all of us in some sense. So.
yeah, and I think what Dr. Kurdistani talks about, like for him, it's about solving a problem. And I don't think for him it's a job that he gets to think and read articles and find and try to tinker new things. I'm sure, everybody in their job does everything every day they don't like doing.
Exactly.
I'm sure, like, I don't know, grant writing doesn't sound fun. Maybe it does, I don't know.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
But you have to do it, and if you want to pursue things that you're interested in, it doesn't feel like a job. You enjoy it, and
Exactly.
yeah, but life is a risk, a walk, coming to a new country and jumping through hoops, that's a risk, and that's a journey that he took. Now, hopefully nobody else has to do it, but unfortunately, a lot of people are doing it today. So
All right, so our
let's
next
take a
question.
couple more questions.
All right, so our next question that we have here is, when you applied to jobs or when you were applying to your jobs or positions, did you share your full story? And at the time, if you did that, did it help or hurt you at all? Did you feel accepted in the educational places that you're in?
Yeah, those are really good questions. So I did talk a little bit about my experience, but not so much or to the detail that I shared with you guys today, because obviously the context was different. Because I in some sense, what happened to me in terms of, growing up in Iran and having to escape and coming to America, I mean, some of that was not necessarily my choice, like we left Iran or I left Iran because it just, there was opportunities were not there. And so, a lot of people were leaving and a lot of people are still leaving. And so I feel like some of that stuff doesn't really show who I am, but rather like what happened to me, right? But what I wanted to be judged on and what I had done in the lab, right? And so I was like, look, I made a conscious choice. I picked this problem. I solved this problem, right? I made these discoveries, and so I put that more front and center, more than like you know where I came from and like my story. I think because I think to me, I'm more proud of like what I had done as opposed to what I'd gone through, as an immigrant, right? In terms of acceptance, clearly, um, they offered me a job here. I got a lab. They supported me. I became chair of the department. So clearly, some acceptance of who I am and some trust in the fact that I can do the jobs and take care of the responsibilities that are bestowed upon me. But look, life is complicated, right? So I can't say that I haven't heard things that can be hurtful, about some stereotypes of being from Iran, like did I see camels when I was in Iran, or did I grow up with camels, or this and that. And some of this came from people that are in many, many other areas were completely helpful to me and supportive, right? So either the joke came out the wrong way or just, they didn't think about it. So those things are hurtful, but at the same time, I can't complain, right? I can't complain. I have a lab. I chair the department. I have been given serious responsibility, and so some of the stuff I let it go. Some of it I've confronted people and others you just let in one ear and let out the other, and that's it, right? So so overall, I think that my story is one thing, but I try not to lean on it as much, especially when it comes to work, because I really want people to focus on the science, and not because I escaped from Iran or whatever. So if that makes sense.
All right, our next question we have is, I recently graduated from UCLA and wasn't able to do research then, but now after graduating, I want to do research. Do you think it is still possible for me to get involved in a lab here?
It is possible, and depends on exactly what type of sort of lab and what type of thing you want to get involved with, and whether you require financial support or not. So it's not too late, but depending on your circumstances, you may have to think a little bit differently about it than if you're like an active undergrad. In terms of what labs would be useful to you. I'm happy to provide more detail if that person wants to reach out and talk. But it's never too late to go into a lab and do research.
Yeah, and there's a lot of post-bac programs and research that if you haven't done any research, like I know Stanford has one, and I know NIH has them, and so there's a lot of places that you could look for research opportunity. Now, one thing is you have a bachelor's degree, and hopefully you graduated with good grades, and so that's something that most undergrads don't have. And so there's a lot of like that's I would say approach it that way. I know when I used to work at UC Davis, there was a position called junior specialist, and I know some people did those as well, and those were paid positions. Now it's a job, you don't have a lot, like you have to commit 40 hours a week, whereas as an undergraduate, if you're volunteering, there's a lot more flexibility. But yeah, that's the only thing that I know from my end.
Our next question is, what if the thing that interests me does not align with medical school? For example, I like playing my drums and am in a band, but that doesn't align with medical school necessarily. How would medical schools and universities see that? Or should I not even mention it?
No, absolutely mention it, and it does align because it says who you are, and if you're in a band and it's serious involvement and you're writing music, I don't know, performing, have gigs around the country or whatever, you just absolutely put that up front. And I think that's as important as anything else. And there are plenty of musicians, serious musicians who have become doctors and they continue to do their music, and some of them combine music and practicing medicine. And so no, absolutely, it does align because it tells the medical school who you are as a person, and no, you should not hide it.
Did you ever feel like you weren't able to reach your dreams, or like you were scared that you weren't going to like go into med school or anything like that after you left your home country?
Yeah, quite a bit. I mean, when I the first night that I left, the Zaydan, the last city in Iran, we were like sort of deserts and then mountains, and look, those places were just um, you know, as remote as possible as it gets, and as remote as it gets. And so, I remember one night thinking to myself, if something happened to me, if I died here, nobody would ever know what happened to me. Nobody would find my body or anything like that. The first night I was in jail, I remember looking at the ceiling. I was like, okay, how the hell did I ended up here? And and where do I go from here? So yeah, there are plenty of places where you think that things may not turn out the way that you had imagined. But again, some places the choices are black and white. So when I was sort of escaping Iran and walking through Pakistan, like I had to get to the United Nations office, so you had to get out of jail, right? It's not a choice, right? So those places, the decisions are actually in a way much easier to make, right? Because everything is black and white. When it becomes harder is like, when I was an undergrad, it's like, okay, do I go to the lab now or just go out and have a drink or do this and that? Like the choices seem less consequential and like more gray areas. And so and I, those are the places where determination and persistence and stuff like that are actually much more important than sort of this dramatic story of like escaping from Iran and like hiking up the Tora Bora mountains and so forth, right? And so yeah, I mean, you might reach a point like that in your life, and you then have to make a decision, and those decisions will affect will affect your trajectory of your life. But again, what's important is that you do it, you do the best you can with what's in front of you. That sounds very cliche, but it's not. And the accumulation of these little successes is what adds up over time to where you will be as when you get a little older, like me.
I think the person that asked a question about you like music, there's a physician researcher, Dr. Pardis Sabati at Harvard, MIT. She's actually, I put a link there. She's the lead singer and played guitar in a rock band. So, and she did it all through college and medical school. So, there you go. But we have one more question, and then we will let Dr. Kurdistani go because I'm sure he has other things that he needs to address on a Friday night.
All right. Our last question, is it necessary to have a microbiology background to work with stem cells in a lab setting, or would it be possible to work with them undergrad or postgrad with as little as a biology minor?
Yeah, look, I mean, that's a very specific area, but again, if you're talking about sort of an experience for applying for medical school, it doesn't really matter what you research in. You can do research in applied math, work in the physics department, do whatever, right? I can tell you that UCLA the PhD program has these tracks for people who are interested in combining medicine with areas of inquiry that may not be obvious. So, for example, we have this social sciences track where people are combining medicine and history, or medicine and literature. We had one candidate one year that I really tried to recruit, and he ended up going someplace else. He was interested in getting his PhD in architecture because he wanted to design hospitals that are much more conducive to making patients feel calm and making the hospital much more conducive to sort of compassionate care of patients. So we need people in medicine. Medicine is really a microcosm of everything that's human, and so it's really important to come from different sides. For a specific area of research, no, I mean, look, you could do microbiology. If you like microbiology and you don't have a lot of experience, it's fine. Just find a microbiology lab, go in there, stay in there, and work hard, and the path will open up for you.
All righty.
Okay.
Well, I'm sure we could keep you here till 10 o'clock at night, but we probably should let you go before you get in trouble at home.
Yes. Thank you so much. Well, this was really fun. Yeah. I hope people found it useful.
Thank you very much for making time and taking time away on a Friday night, and great honor having you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.